Okay, hi everyone. This is our fourth series for CAD for SolidWorks Guru 2021. So if you miss those parts, you can head over to SolidWorks Users Philippines. Okay, and you'll see here our first series, which is the part modeling in SolidWorks. Second series is the first series is Master 2D Sketching in SolidWorks. Second series is Part Modeling, and the third is Surface Modeling. If you missed those training, inviting you to head over to youtube.com/SolidWorks Users Philippines. Okay, let me introduce to you our instructor for this evening. I'll be adding Engineer Jomark Bakiran.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and hope you are all doing fine, doing great. Let's begin. Okay, so adding my screen now. Okay, so once more, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Introduction to Sheet Metal in SolidWorks. In this CAD Guru series for SolidWorks, we are still in part modeling. And once more, this time discovering sheet metal. So to create a sheet metal, let me head up, selecting new, and that new document would be a part. So I can select part and select OK. Before we begin sketching, let's first make sure that sheet metal tab is visible. Okay, so to do that, I want you to head over anywhere on this blank area. I'm going to right click over here and under tabs, make sure that sheet metal is enabled. Okay, notice I have two instances of that sheet metal toolbar. So let me select this and tear this off. Let me close this one because I already have here. Okay, so let me show you another productivity tip for sheet metal. So if ever you'll be using sheet metal more often, we can customize sheet metal. So I'm going to head over to any of these tabs. So currently under sheet metal, I'm going to right click and select customize. Okay, so under shortcut bars, I can scroll down, head over to sheet metal. And if there's any of the buttons here that you would be frequently using, you can simply left click on that, drag and drop that over here. Okay? So another example, let's say corner relief. You're using this more often. I'm going to drag and drop this. So notice the plus button. In addition, I can rearrange this button commands by left click, holding and dragging. So notice that vertical black line. So in addition, if I want to simply delete this shortcut, I can right click and simply delete. Another possible productivity tip for you is, let's say under sketch, I can head over also to the sketch tab. Let's say you prefer always using center line. I can left click and hold, drag and drag that over here. So notice it rearranges. Okay. Let me hit delete on that. Another one is under mouse gestures. I can search for, let's say we are frequently using flange. I can select base flange, drag and drop that over here under mouse gesture. On the left, Okay, in addition, I can head over to this drop down and even have 12 gestures at once. Also, under the keyboard tab, let's say we prefer changing the normal to view. I can head over to normal to and add an additional shortcut. Let's say spacebar. So I'm hitting my spacebar. I can override this one. So I have an additional command for normal to. Okay, so let me select cancel for now. Moving forward, so what is sheet metal? So for sheet metal, the keyword for that is constant thickness. So it has many applications. A must for designers, most especially also for mechanical engineers. So showing you applications of sheet metal. So typically if you are using a frequent user of computer and electronic products, those products utilizes sheet metal. So it's all around us. Definitely a must for a designer. Let's head back to Solidworks. The most basic of all sheet metal features is the base flange. And before we can create a base flange, we need a sketch. So let's head over to our feature manager design tree, heading over to top plane and selecting sketch. Okay, so if you have reached this session of our CAD Guru series, we're expecting that you have already mastered sketching and the relations. So feel free to head back to our previous recordings for sketching and the relations. So let me just quickly create a simple rectangle for us to create the base flange. I can hit S for shortcuts in SolidWorks. Let me select corner rectangle. Let me drop our first corner on our origin and left click here. Let me hit escape and exit out of this sketch. Head over to sheet metal tab and select base flange tab. So we're asked to select an existing sketch. I can head over to our feature tree, select sketch 1. Okay. And for its thickness, let's say I prefer 1 millimeter. Next, another important factor in sheet metal is the bend allowance. So generally, if you don't know the exact value for that, I'm going to, or definitely you as well, be leaving this to K factor. But if you know the values for such as allowance, deduction, or calculation, so feel free to key in or type in that value. But generally, once more, leaving this to K factor by default. And if you're opting for an accurate flat patterns, definitely you should determine the bend allowance or deduction. Okay, so in addition, we can change the relief from rectangular, tear, or round. So leaving this to rectangular for now and selecting the green check mark. So as quick as that, we have created our first sheet metal. So once more, keyword is constant thickness. So this one, I'm going to select this edge having a, notice at the bottom right, constant thickness of 1 millimeter. Next, let's discover the Flange tool. But first, recall and notice for base flange, we created a closed profile. So a rectangular one. Let me delete this for now. Let me delete absorb features, and let's create a new sketch. Okay, so let's sketch on, how about the front plane? Let's create a new sketch. And this time, I'm going to simply sketch out lines. So this one definitely is an open profile. Okay, hitting escape, exiting out of this sketch, heading over to sheet metal tab, selecting base flange tab. So notice, based on lines, we have created a sheet, another sheet metal. So let me click on the green check mark. Notice the difference between the base, and this time we created simply a line. So if I head back to our feature tree, edit this sketch, add an additional lines, okay, making this more complicated, exiting out of this sketch. So notice it updates. So that's the Flange tool in SolidWorks. Third one, let's discover how to create tabs. But first, let me minimize this lines. So hitting S, I'm going to select trim entities. Let me trim away these lines. Selecting the green check mark, exiting out of this sketch. Okay, so for creating tabs, I'm going to select this face and sketch on this. Hitting L for line. So let me drop our first point on this edge. Left click here, left click, simply creating lines. And left click here. So for tabs, we need a closed profile or boundary. So this is not yet done. We need to close this up. Hitting escape, exiting out of this sketch, and heading over to our sheet metal tab, selecting base flange tab. So notice we have created an additional sheet metal, specifically a tab. So let me select this green check mark. Notice. Okay, so let me enforce the learning for tabs about this one. On this face, let me select this. Let's create another sketch. Hit L for line, left click here, left click, and let me show you another technique. So I'm about to create another line, but I prefer an arc. So I'm going to head back to this endpoint. So notice there's a yellow dot. Once I leave that dot, it's now an arc. So another technique. Left click here, left click, and closing this one as a boundary. Hitting escape and exiting out of this sketch. Heading over to sheet metal tab, selecting base flange tab. Okay, so we have created another tab. Selecting the green check mark. And another reminder, so let me head back to our tab and edit this sketch out. Definitely this point or corner must not go past this point. So otherwise, this will create error. So take note of that. You're limited to this boundary. Okay, exiting out. And of course, we can create cut features on our sheet metal. So to demo that out, how about selecting this face? Let's create a new sketch. Let me create a, how about a slot. So left click here, left click, just simply creating a slot. Let's make this concentric with this arc. Okay, so exiting out of this sketch and heading over to features and simply selecting extrude cut. Okay, in addition to that, because this is sheet metal and I prefer, unless otherwise you want this going up to this sheet metal, I can simply head over to our properties and enable link to thickness. So selecting the green check mark, as simple as that, we have created a cut extrusion on our sheet metal. Next one, let's discover how to create an edge flange. So let's switch our tab from feature to sheet metal, and for an edge flange, this time we no longer need to create a sketch. So let me select edge flange, and how about I select this edge. So notice these arrows that follows my cursor. Left click on that. In addition, we have an angle over here. We can adjust this sheet metal's angle for this flange. Let me leave this back to 90. Okay, so for the flange length, this one, this arrow denotes this value. So I can type in here 5. Notice as it adjusts, let me key in 10 for this. And below, we have the virtual sharps. So feel free to discover this. I highly suggest you do this on your own to feel the difference. Okay, so but normally by default suggesting you leave this to this setting, outer virtual sharp. So for the flange position, highly suggesting you do this on your own to have a feel of the difference. Okay, so material inside, material outside. So notice the shift on our flange. Okay, so bend from virtual sharp, tangent to bend. So typically leaving this to material inside by default. So trim side bends. So for this instance, we do not have an additional edge. Later we'll discover more about that. But for offset, this one, we're adding an additional offset. So this one is that 100. So let me just change this to 20. Okay, so that is offset. Let me turn this off. And for the trim side bends, so under edge, under the edge, so I can add additional edges. So notice as I select this edge and this edge. Okay, so we have an additional, as quick as that, additional flange. Okay, so in addition, we have the custom bend allowance here available as well, and the custom relief type. Okay, so let me select the green check mark. So that's the edge. As quick as that, we have created an additional material for our sheet metal utilizing the edge. Once more, with the edge of flange, we simply selected an edge to create an additional flange. So, but let me head back to our edge of flange and edit this feature. And notice here, there's an edit flange profile. So with this, we can create an additional sketch. So, but for now, let me select these two edges, right click and delete them both. Let me zoom in and select edit flange profile. So notice we can now edit this flange and customize its shape. So I can hit L for line. Let me create a line here. So we're adding an additional material here. Left click here. And the thing for this to watch out, so notice this is currently a profile, but this one is not recognized by Solidworks as a profile. So we need to trim this section out. I'm going to hit S, selecting trim entities. Let me trim this out. So notice this is now a profile. Okay, and I can now grab this window and simply select finish. So notice we added a new flange utilizing the edge flange, this time creating a sketch. And yes, of course, because this is we created a boundary. So once more to demo out, I'm going to head back to our edge flange, edit that sketch, and if I place a circle here, definitely we now have a hole. So one of the advantage, once more, with the edge flange. And for those who have registered for this live stream, I'm going to be sharing this file. So let me hit Control S, save this out. So let me name this as 01. Okay, so let's create a new sheet metal. Selecting new. Once more, new part. And let me quickly create a new base. Heading over to top plane. Let's create a new sketch. Hit S for shortcuts, and let's grab our center rectangle. Hitting escape, let me dimension this out. Let's say for this to be 50. Hitting escape, and I want this to be perfectly square. Selecting this edge and this edge. Selecting equal. Let's exit out of the sketch. Head over to Sheet Metal tab. Create a new base. So for the thickness, I prefer 1. I'm going to accept this and hitting enter. And now let's discover the miter flange. So selecting miter flange. So inserts a series of flanges on edges of sheet metal part. So it sounds like edge of flange. So let me select this edge. And let's create a line. Hitting L. Let me create a line here. Hitting escape and exiting out of this sketch. So notice it created an additional material or flange. So the usual parameters such as a flange position available here. Okay, so once more, this looks like a simple edge of flange, but the power of miter flange is, let me just remove this sketch. is selecting multiple edges. So I'm going to select this edge and this edge and this edge. So here we have created a miter. So that's what miter is all about. And for the start and offset, so it's simply offsetting this endpoint. So if I key in 5 here, notice that effect. 5 here, it moved by 5 millimeters. Okay, so once more, with a miter flange, we can create a quick, complex sheet metal with this feature. So let me increase this gap distance, let's say 2 millimeters. So notice it updates. And the usual stuff for flanges, we have the custom bend allowance and a custom relief type. Selecting the green check mark. And once more, that's the miter flange. Let me save this one, hitting Control S. And let's save this as 02. Okay, let me close this one, hitting Control 4. And let's create a new sheet metal part. So selecting new. Once more, it's a part, selecting OK. Let's quickly create a sheet metal base. So let's sketch on top plane, creating a new sketch. Hitting S for shortcuts. Let me grab our corner rectangle, quickly creating a rectangle coming from our origin. Hit S, and I would like to trim this out, left clicking and hold. Next, let me grab our arc tool, selecting this point and this point. Hitting escape. And let me align this point with our, or have this center point of this arc coincident with our origin. So make coincident. Let's exit out of this sketch and head over to sheet metal tab, quickly creating a base. Okay, I prefer 1 millimeter thickness. Right click, selecting OK. Next, let's create another open sketch or open profile, selecting this face, selecting sketch, and hitting L for line, quickly creating a vertical line, horizontal line, and an angled line. I can resize this because this is not yet fully defined. And this time we are going to discover the swept flange. So notice as I head over to sheet metal, we don't have swept flange here. So a while ago I have demonstrated how to customize this sheet metal toolbar tab. So to look for that swept flange, I can type in the search command swept flange. The other one is under insert tool, sheet metal. We have here swept flange. So if you're frequently using this command, highly suggesting you customize this and put that on the toolbar. Selecting swept flange and sketch 6, this one already selected, and our profile or path. For the path, I'm going to select this line, this arc. Okay, so notice, same with our edge flange. We have the custom bend allowance, custom relief type. We have the other options here for the flange position. We can trim side bends, have a start and offset. So notice, let me revert that back to 0. In addition, when creating this type of sheet metal, you have to consult with your vendor. Okay, so highly suggesting also in sheet metal, same with plastic molding injection, highly suggesting you consult with your manufacturer or vendor when creating or designing parts. So let me click on the green check mark. And that's creating a swept flange in Solidworks. Let me save this out as 03. Okay, so shout out to our friends in Philippine Society of Mechanical Engineers, to all industrial designers. Shout out to Binildian Industrial Designers as well. Okay, next we will discover Jog Feature. Let's create another part, hitting Control N for new, double click on part. And how about let's sketch on our front plane, selecting sketch, hitting L for line. I'm quickly creating these lines. Moving this, and let me apply a midpoint relation to this line and our origin. Selecting midpoint, moving this, and add a dimension. Let's say the distance from this vertical line to this vertical line is 100. Hitting escape. Let's exit out of this sketch. Head over to Sheet Metal tab, selecting Base Flange tab, selecting this sketch. Let me change the direction to mid-plane, pull this arrow. I'm okay with a 1mm thickness, right-click, selecting OK. And the typical usage of the Jog feature is mostly for sheet metal casing and enclosure. So we're going to add a Jog feature here to connect these two edges. And before I grab our Jog feature, let me first sketch on this face. I'm going to simply create a vertical line, hitting escape, and let's exit out of this sketch, heading now to Sheet Metal tab and selecting Jog. For the fixed face, it will be this face. So notice the effect of a Jog, and I can adjust the height of this Jog, reverse its direction, take note of dimension positions, and we can enable fix projection length. Let me change the distance to 1mm, the thickness of our sheet metal, And in addition, we can adjust the jog angle. So I'm currently lowering this one, reaching up to the point, almost the thickness. Okay, I'm okay with 54. In addition, we have a custom bed allowance, the typical one. Let me now exit out of this feature creation. So we have a warning here which is specifies less than a minimum. Is when you see this prompt or message, simply select OK. And from here, we can now extend this edge by creating a tab. So let's select this face, create a new sketch. Hit S for shortcuts, grabbing corner rectangle. Let's create a rectangle somewhere around here. Exiting out of this sketch. Heading over to sheet metal and select base flange tab. Selecting the green check mark, and from here you can add a weld here, a rivet, or a PAM fastener to close this up or reinforce this connection. So once more, typical usage for sheet metal casings and enclosures. And let me save this up as 04. So once more, if you have registered, we will be forwarding or sharing this files. Let me close this up, hitting Control 4. Control 4 once more. Control N for new. Double click on part. Once more, let's quickly create a base flange. Let's sketch on our top plane. Creating a new sketch. Hitting S for shortcuts. Let me select center rectangle. Creating this rectangle. Hit S once more. This time, how about corner rectangle? And hit S once more. Let's trim this out. Selecting the green check mark. Exiting out of this sketch. Heading over to sheet metal. Let's now select base. And select this sketch. So preferred thickness 1. Hitting enter. Let's discover the hem feature. Okay, so it serves many purposes. So one is to improve the appearance of edges. So to remove burrs and rough edges. And the most typical of all is to fasten 2 sheet metal parts. Okay, heading up to sheet metal tab, selecting hem. Prompted to select edges. Let me select this edge, and this edge. And notice, once we select multiple edges, we are given a miter gap option. We can change the type and size. Let me select closed. Okay, so we have a teardrop and rolled. Okay, heading back to closed. Let me zoom in. And in this scenario, we are improving the part's stiffness. So once more, that is hem. Let me select the green check mark, commit to this one. Let's create another hem. Selecting this edge. And let me change the option to bend outside. For the type and size, changing this to rolled. Let me zoom in. Let's increase the radius. Change the angle. So I'm increasing the angle here. And for the radius, let me change this. Same with our thickness. 1. Increasing the angle. And from here, notice we can now insert a pin or rod here, similar to a hinge. Committing to this. And once more, that's creating a hem in Solidworks. Let's now save this to 05, hitting save. Next, let's discover unfolding. Let me hit Control 4 to close this up. And let's open a new file. I have this prepared for you. I have a simple bend here. And we are going to discover unfold. So yes, we can unfold. Aside from flatten in Solidworks, my intent here is to create a cut extrusion, unfold this, and fold it back once more. So let's head up. Once more, sheet metal tab, selecting unfold. Prompted to select a fixed face. I want this to be fixed. And for the bends to unfold, we are going to select this bend. So it just so happened we have one bend here. We can do multiple bend selection in this feature. So selecting this bend to unfold, selecting the green check mark, and from here I can sketch on this face about dropping a slot. Let's drop a slot here. I'm okay with this size. Let's exit out of this sketch, heading over to features, selecting extruded cut. Let's link to thickness. Okay, creating that cut. And now let's head back to sheet metal tab. And from unfold, let's now select fold. Fixed face selected, and bends to fold is once more this bend. Selecting this, selecting the green check mark, and that's unfolding and folding back in Solidworks. Let me close this one, Control F4, and let's open a new one, 07. So notice here I have a simple solid cube. And there are instances that you may want to convert a solid body into sheet metal body in Solidworks. So yes, Solidworks has that feature to convert solids into sheet metal. And of course, that command is nested inside the sheet metal toolbar. So it is beside base flange tab. So let's convert to sheet metal. We are prompted to select a fixed entity. Let's select the bottom face of this cube. And I prefer the thickness to be 1. Radius to be 1 as well. And this time, we are prompted to select edges or faces that will be representing as a bend. So for this instance, I prefer this to serve as a bend. This edge, this edge, this edge will serve as a bend. Hitting Control 7 for isometric view, and I prefer this edge to be a bend as well. So notice as I zoom in, we have a preview of what's to come. In addition, we have the option to rip sketches. We have options for corner defaults. We can define the default gap for all rips and the default overlap ratio for all rips. In addition, because this is now a sheet metal, we have the custom bend allowance and auto relief. So let's check out what's the final result for this cube. Selecting the green check mark, and let's select flatten. Okay, so as quick as that, from a solid body, we have converted this cube into a sheet metal. So selecting, unfold. Another use case, let me open up a step file. So whenever this window appears, simply select yes. Running import diagnostics. Committing to this. And let's now convert this to a sheet metal, heading over to sheet metal tab. Convert to sheet metal. And I prefer the fixed entity to be this face. And let's confirm. If ever you may have the need to confirm the thickness of an imported body. So to do that, head over to evaluate, select measure, and in this instance, I'm going to select this edge to confirm it is 0.8. So if this is not, type in the thickness, the target thickness for that body. Okay, so notice as I select the faces or edges that represents bend, like this one, I'm having an error. So the workaround for that is simply because we have run an import diagnostic, Solidworks can perform a collect all bends. So notice it detected all of that bends, leaving the defaults. And feel free to tweak this out, selecting the green check mark. So let's confirm if this really is now a working sheet metal, because I can now perform a flatten. So it flattens this out. And once more, that's the application of converting to sheet metal in Solidworks. Let's now save this as a 08. Next, let's now discover the forming tools of Solidworks. So it's under the design library. So Solidworks has a library of forming tools. Now, if this design library is not available, simply head over to View under User Interface. Please enable Task Pane. So once more, View, User Interface, Task Pane. Okay? And notice mine under Design Library and all of the forming tools, annotation, assembly features are not visible or loaded here. To load that up, let's select Add the File Location. Head over to your C drive under Program Data. Head over to SolidWorks. Heading over to where the version of SolidWorks is. So I'm using SolidWorks 2021. Double left click. And if I enter design library, I can select any of these folders, but I prefer selecting the top folder, design library, and let's now select OK. So design library now loaded, which includes the forming tools. Let's create a new sheet metal. Let me first save and close this up. Hitting Control N, selecting part. Let's name this as 09. Okay, I prefer sketching on our right plane. Let's create a new sketch. Hitting L for line. Left click here. Left click, head up. Left click, hit S. And let's grab or dimension this horizontal line to be 300 millimeters. Hitting escape, exiting out of sketch mode. Let's turn this into a sheet metal having a, let's say, a thickness of 1 millimeter. For direction, let me change this to mid plane. Grab this arrow. I'm okay with this width. Selecting the green check mark. Let me now show you how to easily drag and drop a form tool, create a form feature on your sheet metal in SolidWorks. So let's head over to our design library under forming tools. How about let's discover embosses. I'm going to select circular emboss. Left click and hold. So notice the message here on the left to place the feature normal to a model. So drag and drop. I'm going to release it here. And right click. Let's select OK. So as quick as that, we have created a circular emboss in a SolidWorks. And to define the exact position of these tools, let me head over to our circular emboss. Let me edit this feature. We have here position. I can create another instance of this emboss by simply left clicking. In addition, I can grab the line tool. Let's create a line here. Hitting escape and let's add a dimension. Let's say 100. Hit escape. Turn this line into a construction geometry. Next, I would like this point to be aligned vertically to this midpoint. So selecting these 2 points, selecting vertical. And from here, I can add a coincident relation for this emboss, going to this endpoint, adding coincidence. So that's how we can position forms. And let me move this one here and hit the green check mark. Let's bring in more form features. How about lances? Let me bring in bridge lance, drag and drop. Okay, I can rotate this. Let me key in 90. Let's check. Selecting the green check mark. Looking nice. How about louvers? Let me drag and drop a louver on this face. Let's rotate this to 90. Selecting the green check mark. And from here, we can utilize the linear pattern to create more instances of this louver. So under features and faces, selecting this louver. Okay, so let me flip the direction. Let's say we prefer only 2 instances. Let me key in 50. Let's check. How about 4 instances instead? Okay, so selecting the green check mark, louver added. And finally, let's learn how to create a custom form tool. So let's say I'm going to create a recess here for our sticker, label sticker. Let me first select this edge to determine its length, so 200. Let's now hit Control N, create a new part. And this time, we will not be utilizing sheet metal. Let me save this form tool, hitting Control S. Let's name this as 10 label emboss. Hitting save. Let's sketch on our top plane. Create a center rectangle. Hit S and grab dimension. Let me key in 100 here and 50. Let's exit out of this sketch. Hit S and let's extrude this. So once more, our previous sheet metal has a thickness of 1 millimeter. So I prefer conforming to that. Keying in 1. And let's commit to this, selecting OK. Next, let's now add the fillets. So I'm going to select this 4 edges. Right click, selecting fillet. I prefer radius to be 5. Hitting enter. Selecting the green check mark. Let's add another fillet. Fillet going all the way this time. Radius to be 1. Hitting enter. Let's now head over to our sheet metal tab and select forming tool. The stopping face, I would like this to stop at this face. And for the faces to remove, if you want to remove a face, it'd be more like a cutting tool that would cut into the part. So we will not be utilizing faces to remove in this scenario. So if you want to just emboss this, let's leave faces to remove blank. Okay, so selecting the green check mark, hitting Control S once more. Let's now add this into our library. So let's head up under Design Library, selecting Add to Library. Okay, the file name, I prefer this to be Label Emboss, Item to Add, selecting our part. And I want this form to be placed into our embosses folder. So it will appear here. Selecting the green check mark. And let me close this. Notice under embosses, we now have our custom form tool. Okay, so let me drag and drop this here. Inspecting and selecting the green check mark. So from here, I can now place the label sticker on this sheet metal. Okay, so that's how creating a custom forming tool is in SolidWorks. If you're still there, thank you for joining us this evening. I highly appreciate it. And if you have questions, comments, suggestions, feel free to reach out to me in LinkedIn. Once more, my name is Jomark Bakiran. So once more, thank you so much, and see you on our future CAD trainings with SolidWorks Users Philippines, and salute to our friends in Digital Creatives Philippines. So going back to you, Miss Nelsie.
Bye, Sir Jomark.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe. See you all soon.